All right, recording started. All right. So we're welcoming back Guy Magallanes today for a special demo, not dinner. We had him before. He's a native San Franciscan. He's self-taught and he's painted since childhood. He started out in other fields like graphic and textile design, but soon his passion for painting took over. He started teaching workshops in 2005, and in 2007, he became a full-time artist. Since then, he's been featured in many publications and even did a TV stint for PBS called Art to Art. Some of you may know him from that. You can see his images in the following publications. Well, Splash Book Series 9, 10, 15, and one is of 15 splash artists selected to contribute to the Watercolor Secrets book, and they're all by North Light Books. Are they still on their website? I believe. No, they're not. Okay. He is also a signature member of the Society of West Coast Artists and also serves on their board. He continues to offer weekly classes in his studio in San Carlos, California. And for more information about his classes or workshops, you can visit his website at www.guymagallanes.com, and I'll put that in the chat box. So at this time, please welcome my good friend, Guy Magallanes. Yay.
There we go. Now I agree.
So I will mute myself.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, yay! So, well, what the heck did I just say? I'm so happy to be here. Susan went ahead and forwarded me some of the questions that you guys have. And so I have some things to work out for you to kind of explain. And I also got a painting from Kathy Dolan. And I think it's from Greece, and it's beautiful. And I'm going to go ahead and start off there. There were a lot of questions about Mr. Clean. Can you paint over once you have removed color? And we're going to find out. I like to scrub. I don't like using Mr. Clean, but it's really fast and effective. I just remember when I was in a gallery, we would take paintings down, and then we would use wax to put the little stickers, you know, your name, the title, the cost of the painting, all of that, or, you know, and we would scrape the wax off, and we would get a Mr. Clean eraser, and you could see where there was a haze where we had used Mr. Clean. So I decided then, and you'd have to go over with a damp, clean cloth to try and get rid of it, but it would change the finish of the paint. So I was kind of skeptical about using it on a painting. So I did a painting, it was of a white rose, and somebody had put their shadow in a little too dark. So they went ahead, used a little bit of Mr. Clean, and we weren't able to get the, as she removed color, it was hard to put color back in to make it match with everything else. But I think it's a useful tool, but I wouldn't do that at the beginning of a painting. What was I getting? And then there were a lot of questions about masking and some questions about blooms and blossoms and how do you work that? So I'm going to go ahead and start with Kathy Dolan's painting. So
Kathy is here too.
Yay! I have the. So I'm going to go ahead, make room here. So this is Kathy's painting. And it's wonderful. And I just as an aside, I don't know if this is going to be on the recording, this box here. Do I just say later?
Yeah, say later, but I don't think.
Okay, there we go. And so anyway, so Linda had written some, gave me some, I mean, Kathy sent me some notes, and sorry about that, Kathy. You don't like that the trees are too solid. I tried erasing sky holes in them, but blah. And I do see where you erased a little bit, and that's okay. From far away, it just looks like there's some sun, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. I don't like the sloping rock formation. It's uninspiring, and I was hoping it could be a focal point. And I think you're talking about this right here. And the background is boring, not well enough defined, and the sky is boring. What you do like is you like the road on the verge, in the verge of the road, and the bushes on the left side of the road. Yes, I like those too. And you like the staggering of the bushes on the left. I like that too. So we can see what's closer and what's farther behind. And you like the tree trunks, and you like the composition. And you were ambivalent about the hazy transition of the sea to the sky. That doesn't bother me. It's kind of like a marine atmosphere. But you think the shadows cast by the tree are not well defined. So one of the questions that I got was also talking about design. And you were talking about, you had talked about you were happy with the composition, but there was a question about the design versus or value. And this is what is missing here is some value. So what I did was I took I took your photo reference and I just converted it into black and white. And it's really dark here, and it's really dark here, and it's really supercharged dark. And with these darks, it's helping you to lead into all of this. And you can see it's really hazy and light here between this ocean and the sky. So that's fine. This is your painting, which I converted into black and white, versus the photo reference. So what I would do is I would get this a lot darker right in here. One of the other things that I want to talk about is this tree is kind of obscured, and you have a perfect tree in here. So, and it's darker. So the other thing I want to talk about is, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. If you notice in the photo, these tree trunks and branches are twisty. They're old with age, and they're right by a cliff, it looks like. And so, and your trees are perfect. They look like they came from a nursery. They're so well cared for. So I want to increase the value in here and in your shadows. But you've got perfect trees. So I would want to kind of bend and twist some of these, as you can see over in here. So that's what I'm going to do. I don't mind your sky at all. What I do mind is that we need some oomph in here. And that's what I'm going to work on now. I'm going to switch out my glasses. And I don't know what colors you use, but I see some granulation. So I'm just going to go ahead and mix a dark. And I'm going to.
This is a good example of how you can change something that's already there.
Yeah.
People always learn with them.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix a dark. And I'm seeing some blues in here. So I'm going to use French ultramarine because it's so granulating, but it's so darn bright. But I love it being bright. But anyway, I'm going to make it dark. And I'm just getting some French ultramarine blue. And then I'm also going to get some, and that's by Winsor Newton. And I'm also going to get some Pyrrole Orange, and this is by Daniel Smith. And I love the combination of these two together. Makes a wonderful, wonderful dark. And so it's kind of on the eggplant side. It's kind of a violet color. And so I think that will be kind of neutral with everything that's going to be on the painting. So I'm going to switch views. There we go. And so it's so scary to work on somebody else's painting. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to introduce a few darks in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, if I'm looking at this right in here, there's some darks that are in here. So I'm just going to get some of this wet with water. I know it's so exciting to see some nothing because I'm just using water. And now what I'm going to do is get my dark that I just mixed and put some of that in here. So it's kind of light in here. And I'm just going to be bringing out some branches. And I'm just working in some places, it's a little damp. And this might be a little shocking, but this is what I do. This is how I work. And so I'm just going to soften some of this. I'm going to let this move a little bit more, and I'm just breaking it up. And I'm just going to soften a little bit more, but I'm giving the tree just a wee bit more movement. And I'm going to get my dark again, but I'm going to be a little bit lighter.
You always wet your paper before painting.
No, I don't always wet the paper before I paint. So I wanted a nice edge here, and I wanted to have kind of like some branching maybe coming out here. So if I wet that, you wouldn't be able to see this. Good question. But I do like to soften as I go. So it's not so hard edge, just like I soften there.
So explain soften.
So what's happening is, if this is where I left off where it was wet. So if I leave that alone, I'm going to have a line of demarcation there. And I don't want a line of demarcation. So I am moving a little bit of water out here. So when I put this down, it's going to soften out. But I only got it wet there. So if this keeps moving, it's going to stop wherever the water line is. I'm just going to get some darks in here just to break that up a little bit. And now I'm bringing some more dark. And this is kind of nestled. And so I want there to be parts of the tree that you're seeing, but parts of it that you're not seeing. So maybe there's something there, we could kind of connect it. That was a little too wet. And I'm just going to bring this down. This is all, if you look at the photo reference, this whole entire tree is in shade. All the light is hitting the tops of the tree there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring this out. I'm going to kind of stop there on that tree. And it's so shocking as I look into so I'm adding a little bit more just so it's not alone. That's so shocking. And like I said, it's so scary to work on somebody else's pain, but I'm at the same time having fun.
Over a question about sky holes. With the darkening, does she still need to do that?
No,
Or would you do that?
no, I wouldn't. You by adding these darks over it, I'm still seeing some light shining through, and we've got where branches are, where the light is coming through. Your sky is light enough that we don't need to worry about that. Okay, so this is charged with some more color or more value. Oh, I'm looking for the brush and I had it in my hand. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I am working wet on dry here. And this, I'm just kind of changing the trunk a little bit. And this is nestled. There's like, I don't know if these are rocks or bushes, but that helps. And I'm just going to leave this tree alone because it's pretty dark in comparison. What I'm going to do now, oh my gosh, my paint is all drying up, is I am going to put some branches in here, and I am going to just loosely change them. There's a wonderful curvature of things that we're kind of seeing in the photo that we're not in here. So I'm just changing that up, and I'm just going to bring some in, have them move around a bit. And it looks like they're all heading towards the water. They're thirsty, they're parched. And this is going to connect this tree, and I'm going to just change this a little bit, and I'm just going to bring this out a little bit more and then have it come in. And I like your branches and your bushes a lot. Now, later I'll come back when this is a little bit drier and I can add some branches in here. But right in here, I need to get this a little bit darker. So now that that was put in, the branches were put in first. Now I could go ahead and come in here and add a little bit of value. And it doesn't, what I like to do is I like to put value down, and it doesn't matter really what color it is. I'm just getting it darker. I tried to go with the colors that you were using, and I don't know what colors you were using, but from what I was seeing, I wanted there to be some granulation in there. And of course, you can rework this to however you're going to be happy with whatever I'm doing. But just by adding some of this value, what's happening is we're seeing it more. It's coming forward. And what I'm going to do right now is make some more dark. And hopefully I'm hitting the right. So I'm getting French ultramarine blue. I really want that to hang there. And I'm getting some more pure orange. I'll just put that there. Mix these together. It's a wonderful, yummy dark. And this is more on the eggplant side, so I'm going to add a little bit more French ultramarine blue to get it more on the violet side. And so now what I'm gonna do is break some of this up. You have wonderful lights that are in here.
Oh, change your view.
Oh, sorry. So you have wonderful lights in here, and I'm just going in and adding some darks. And this will help with your, it will help to pull that in. And it pulls right back into this next tree over here. And I'm gonna come in here a wee bit. And down in here, I added some water to the brush because I don't want it all super crisp and hard with the color, but I do want some more value in here. And the composition was wonderful. We're just making it stronger. And that was when I'm gonna add some moisture here or water. Just to bring this rock forward a bit.
Bring up, move.
And I am going to get some of these bigger shapes in here damp. It's like all of a sudden they're all the same. So we want to show that there's some steps in here, kind of like. So if I add a little bit of moisture, where some of those bigger steps are going to show that they're not all exactly the same. There's a rhythm that's happening in here. And what happens is if we keep doing the same shapes, they all look the same. So I'm just going in and making this farther away, and I was already in here. And just coming in. And I can already feel a sense of heat. And I can also feel a sense of something being a bit cooler just by adding the darks in here. So your trees are more pronounced and they're not so looking like they were, you know, grown perfectly intended for. These are old trees. They have to contend with the weather changes. And I'm just gonna, in the foreground here, I'm just gonna mute this. And just gonna mute that a bit. And right in here, I'm gonna add some more darks. I mean, you did a great job with the colors. I like how you let the colors play and mingle. I love that. And just adding a little bit of drama. And sometimes that's all we need, just a little bit of drama, not too much. Crazy times we're living in, so I'm just adding a little bit of purple here. And just washing that out. I like it.
Do we have a before?
Yes, we have a before, but now that this has dried up, or my pigment sure keeps drying up, it's so dang freaking warm in here, but this is a little bit drier. So maybe I'll add a couple of branches in here. And they're cut off, you can't see everything. And we don't see everything. And I'm gonna add just a wee bit. In here. Because there's a bunch that are nestled in here. And giving it a little bit more character. So I have to be careful of where I'm going also. Okay. So I'm just going to do a little bit more, and maybe what I'll do is I'll zoom in a little bit.
And whenever you're ready, if you want to tell Kathy to move.
Okay. So right in here, ooh, it's all damp there. I have to remember that. Right here, I'm gonna add just a little bit more of a value here. And it's just going to give this a little bit more depth. And there's a road that goes back here, but I think that's good. So what I'm going to do is zoom out. Ay, caramba. So here, just by adding some darks in here, adding some darks in the trees really helped a whole lot. And we've got a better pathway here and adding some darks here. So it's not just everything is treated the same. And what I'm going to do is see if I can find Kathy's. Let's see. It is right here. And everybody is blocking. Can I move this out of the way? Yes. So it's bright and sunny looking, but the trees are just so perfect. And I love how the light is hitting all in here, and this doesn't bother me at all because it's marine atmosphere. And this is what I've done to change it. So I'm going to stop the share. And so it's cooler in here. There's some more darks in here, and there's just a little bit more going in the background. And when I am painting trees, I love trees. I just think trees are incredible. And I am painting what I'm seeing versus what I know. So you're making your trees perfect. And what I think you loved about this was that there was an openness in here, but that the branches were traveling and moving and twisting. And I want you to start paying attention to how these move. And I don't do a lot of thumbnails anymore, but if I like something, I will convert it to a black and white so that I can see where my values are, where my darks need to be, and where things are moving. So Kathy, do you have any questions for me?
Yes, so my question is in your earlier analysis, you mentioned that the third tree in the background was kind of the same level of precision. Should that be muffled, maybe wet down a little bit so that it kind of blurs and goes to the background? And then the second question is the hillside on the left above the yellowy, does that need something else?
Yeah, good question. So it's like, is this damp? Yeah, we could tone this down. Now this was another question that I was asked. I am not scrubbing, I'm just putting water on here. And I'm just loosening it from the paper. That's all I'm doing.
Can you do that because it's not staining? Two people have a question about lifting.
Even if your color is staining, you can lift. And all I did was just get that wet, and I'm just coaxing it off the page. Even with staining colors, and I will be showing you that in a little bit later. And this is so bright and green right here. So what I'm going to do is I am going to put the opposite color there, and which is kind of I'm just going to put a little bit of a pink in here. And that will kind of just set that back a wee bit. Same thing over here. All I'm going to do is just get this damp. I love this brush. It's a rosemary brush series. Oh God, I can't read it. I think it's 904. I could write that down. But it was, and I'm just going to get the dark again, but I am adding tiny bit of pink to it. I love this brush because it's so soft. It's and I'm just going in and adding little bits of noise. You don't need too much. It's so soft. It's a sable blend with a synthetic. And what I love about this brush especially is if I am moving or painting or doing a glaze where I don't want to disturb what's underneath, this is the brush to use. I was watching, oh God, what's her name? Sarah Yeoman, and she used this brush and I had to get it. And I'm so glad I did. And I'm just going to add a couple of darks in here just to get that a little bit darker. And just by modeling, getting a little bit more color, a little bit, and I'm just working wet and wet and just breaking this up, it just gives it a little bit more. Okay. So you did beautifully. I love all the attention and your mingling of colors and your lights and your darks around it. I just want you to do more darks in here so that you're giving the viewer a chance to see that these are in the shade. This is where it's hot and there's some shading in here. And I might even add a little bit more. So I'm just, now that I have the dark in there, I could take a little bit and increase that. And that sets this back even more. And it's like, when do you stop? But I think I'll stop now. So there's just a couple of things that I would do, and I'm going to zoom in. So Kathy, you had asked about the light branches and everything, or the light marks. that you put in, I see them still. Even though I went over and glazed in, I still see them. What I want to do is I just want to clean up some of these edges. So this is about, I'm not scrubbing, I'm just getting an edge damp, and I'm just, yeah, these are hard edges here, and I want these to be a little bit softer. So I don't know if you could see the difference. Maybe I need to zoom in a little bit more. But yeah, here we go. So right in here, I just want to break some of this up. And this is a soft brush. It's a chisel brush. And all I'm doing is just getting it damp, and I just wiggle the brush. That's all. And then I wipe into the tree, not out into the sky. And for instance, like right here, we've got I'm just going to say a blob. And what I want to do is I just want to break that hard edge up. And then wipe into the tree.
Yeah, it is hard to see, but that's okay.
And you just have, there's just a couple more. And there you go. So I don't like what I did here. I loosened that up too much. So I'm going to put a little bit of green back. Let's get a nice green.
Do you have a time, like how much you want to spend on your painting?
And I'm just putting a little bit of green back in here. And I don't know what kind of trees these were. It looks like they were pine trees, but you could, if it's Greece, you want to kind of think they're olives. But I think these were pine trees. And I'm going to stop now because I'm having fun on your adventure that you went on in here. So thanks for sharing that with us, Kathy. That was fun. I love this tree that's out here. Okay. All right.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your help. I've taken notes, and I think I might try to paint this again. I think it'll turn out better.
Good. Well, this turned out well. It really did. But you could follow along with everything that I said, because it is a good painting. You want it better. Good
Yep.
job.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Would you look in your rosemary and see if it's a 402 or a 902?
It's a 402.
Okay, good. That's what just put in.
And when you're on there, yeah, it's a 402 and it's a short handle. All right, so let's talk about blossoms and staining colors. So it's hard for me to get blossoms. I try sometimes and it's so hard. And I was teaching a class and I was explaining how to put something down and have it soften out, and everybody kept getting blossoms. So I had to explain how they happen. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and how do you kind of get rid of them? That's kind of like a two-step thing. So what I'm going to do is
are you going to make a blossom?
No, I have a dried up blossom here. And I'm getting the edge of that blossom damp. I'm re-wetting the paper around the blossom, and I'm gently just going around. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to squiggle or wiggle that brush. And slowly and surely, the harshness of that blossom is going to disappear. The light area is going to stay light, but the dark perimeter that was like right here is going to start disappearing. And this was worked with permanent rose. So the white area is still there, but the harsh pink edge that was around it is gone. Now that it's gone, I'm going to get this damp, and let's try and see if I can loosen up this edge here. So this is a staining color, which you can see. So I'm just wiggling that brush back and forth. I'm coaxing it off the paper, and I'm keep wiping off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and supersede all of this.
What kind of brush do you use?
This this is my everyday brush, but this company is out of business, but he started a new company, and this is it's by King Art, and it's a premium 14 original gold, and it's series 9020. And you want to be sure to get a max round. Don't just get a round, you want a max round. Woo-hoo-hoo. It has a gorgeous, gorgeous point. The other rounds are lovely, but they have a rounded tip. It ends about like right here. And this has a gorgeous tip. This is an old brush that I use for scrubbing. I liken it to I have just damaged the hell out of this brush. So it's as if it has split ends, and so I could use it roughly. This is what I use to wet an area, but also to nudge an area. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you. I could use this brush with some permanent rose. So I want it deeper down here. And this is how I'm going to supersede this. Oops, I got a little too close. So if I put my color in here, and I get my damp clean brush wherever the heck I just put it. Oh yeah. Oh, I have the wrong glasses on. I'm just going to let that soften out. So my blossom that was there. If I get this wet, let it travel down, and it's pushing the pigment back. And now I can let it run back in, and it's softening out. And it looks gorgeous. And so my blossom is gone. I'm gonna, there's a blossom here, but there's a real blossom right here. Even with staining colors, I'm not getting rid of the jump from this light to this mid-tone here. I'm just getting rid of this harsh, dark part of the blossom. So if I just get that damp, and see, I'm roughing up this brush by going in the opposite direction. Now I'm just going to wiggle it up. And it's gone. So the blossom itself is gone. when I wait for this to dry, I can paint over this. If that makes any sense.
But you didn't wait till it dried on the other one.
Right, I superseded this one. It was right smack dab in the center. This is, I used a very vibrant color also. And this was a definite shape, so there's nothing definite in here. This was just me trying to make a blossom, and it was very successful. So, all right.
Don't have it how you make a blossom.
So how do you make a blossom?
So why do they occur?
Why do they occur? Okay, so what happens is your paper needs to be evenly wet. As you are working and painting, like on a sky, for example. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go. So like I told you though, it's hard for me to make a blossom. So okay, I use a granulating color. I've got Susan over here telling me, whispering, nudging me in my ear, do this, do that. So I'm getting some French ultramarine blue, added it, I'm adding it really lightly. Ooh, isn't that a pretty violet color? Okay, so I'm just bringing this down, and I just have to wait a bit. And the way that you get a blossom, they'll say, oh, maybe it should have been darker up here, or oh, maybe it should be lighter over here, or they want to paint something right next to it when this is already still wet. So if you add a different color, it's going to cause a blossom. But anyway, everything has to be evenly wet. Once you add something wet to this, it's going to have a reaction. So I'm just going to drop some water here and see what's happening. So this pigment didn't get a chance to grab and sink into the paper. This is still damp. By me putting a drop in here, what's happening is it's pushing the pigment away. I'll add a color too. Oh, come on. There we go. It's really cool. It's kind of like magic, but if this was your sky, your sunset sky, and it started drying and you accidentally went over with your brush, that's why I'm right-handed, so I always have my tools on the right-hand side so that I can keep an eye on everything. But this is what happens because this was starting to dry and we added something on top. Now this was almost dry, and I'm gonna zoom in. And when this dries, there will be a blossom. You can see it start happening now, but it's really minuscule. Oh, look at my little finger is shaking. But right there, ooh, I've got a bit of the palsy today. And right there. But this, I think these are gorgeous myself. But if it's on a petal, you don't want it in there. That's a big no-no. So what I did over here, whoops, let me go the other way. I usually wait for this to be totally dry to clean this up. If you're gonna try and clean this up now, you have to paint this whole thing. You have to chase this whole shape. And that's when your paintings start getting overworked. What I did here, if you recall, was I had a blossom, but it was dried up. So I lightened that up. I got rid of the blossom, but while it was wet, I superseded the blossom. Like if I had, let's say this was a petal of a rose and the tips are white. So I superseded that blossom by putting a brilliant color over it, and you can't tell that it was there. And then I had a blossom here that was very uh, dark. I'm losing words. And I got rid of it. It was right here. So now when this is dry, I can decide what I want to paint over this, but I don't have to deal with something like that anymore, because if you paint over this, they just get more and more they keep showing up through all of your glazes and everything. So I try and supersede by painting over what I just fixed, which was something that I showed you right there. So sometimes if I get a blossom and it's in a little tiny area like this, I will go ahead and fix it. But if I'm working on a sky or a perfect petal, I don't want to have to chase that all the way around and overwork it. But if it's in a little teeny tiny area, I will. It depends on the shape and size of what I'm doing. Okay. So I showed how to lighten without damaging or changing the area around it. And I lightened a small area, how to fix an overworked area or a muddy area, lighten a dark area with staining. Well, I kind of showed that. Lifting staining colors, I kind of showed that. And Mr. Clean. Oh, let's get into the Mr. Clean thing. So I'm going to show you a picture of a painting that I let's go here. I hope I put it in here. Yes, here it is. So this was what the image looked like. And this is, oh, and what I should do is I should show you how I did it. So I was working with I scrubbed, originally what I did was I scrubbed this area here and I scrubbed this area here. I didn't scrub very hard. I just wanted to lift some of the dark that was away from these petals. And I used, and actually I have a video, a little 10-minute video to show you on how I got from this to this. So using Mr. Clean, it removed all the dark, heavy colors, but the paper is a little different. Ooh, and there's a piece of masking right here. And I'm going to show that now.
Did you use only the original, Mr. Clean?
Yeah. Are you seeing this?
Yeah.
I guess I can make this bigger.
Think of the share screen.
All right. So I was asked the difference between using Mr. Clean and
I did.
scrubbing. Because scrubbing.
Okay, wait a minute.
I really didn't scrub here. What I did was I loosened it. So I used a soft
Do I make this
scrubbing
larger?
brush. And so I'm going to go ahead and start. So what I do is I just cut Mr. Clean into
Okay, hold
various
on.
shapes. If I need to protect something, for instance,
So I'm
right
sharing.
here, I'm gonna put
Okay, so I
some tape.
just put some tape down
I'm gonna work right in.
and I'm going to see if I can.
I am putting tape down. Kind of finessing it into shape. This area down.
wet, dipped it in water, just this part right here, which I'm going to be using. And it rubs the color right off, along with Mr. Clean. So Mr. Clean is just, what is it? Oh, I forgot the word. Melamine. Say it, melamine. Not Melmac, melamine. This a little bit softer out here. That worked really well. From the team. I'm going to be working right here. And I'm going to use a scrubber. Getting this all wet. Before I have the color supply. So before, or the last time I did this, I used a scrubber brush, which you can see will lift. And I also have a little bit more control. But I have to work harder. And we're going to see if we can beat this. I'm as loud as I could get. Can I speak over this? So instead of just having all of the dark, I kind of want to have some softness. So I am going to work this way. Do you know how to have two screens? But I could have the other one. So what I'm doing is I'm just trying to get rid of the dark and see what was underneath. And I'm just using two different ways to lift it off. Just by adding water, it's going to loosen up all of the pigment that's on top. And I was using the scrubber to get really close to an edge And you saw me where I taped up an edge that I wanted to protect. But this is a painting that is so far removed from what the intention was. I have no idea what the background is going to look like. So as I was removing color, I just wanted to have a softness in there. So that's why I keep going back and adding water and wiping off. And it's easier if you get the paper wet first, because you're working with that Mr. Clean eraser, and that Mr. Clean eraser disintegrates as you're rubbing it on the rough paper. And that Mr. Clean leaves crumbles everywhere. We're gonna see if it damages the paper. I would use this as a last a last ditch effort to save white. But I wouldn't use this as a painting technique. I would use this as a finishing technique. So this is just a test to see how it's going to work. But as you see me painting, you can see these little crumbs and everything. That's Mr. Clean. He's left his mark all over the paper, crumbling away. So anyway, I think you get the gist of what I was doing. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you what the end result was. So if I stop share. Oh yeah, there I am. But the dang video is still playing. So let me stop and escape and come back here. And come back here. Oh, I got so confused there for a minute. Okay, so anyway, this is what I used. Mr. Clean Magic Eraser, 2 times stronger, and he looks like me, except I wear a black V-neck t-shirt. But anyway, so this is what it looks like. I mean, I dip this in water, squeeze it out, and then rub. So I got this wet because I was using such a big area. The paper is roughed up a little bit, but I'm sure it will accept paint. And this is just a test. So let me clean up. And get some colors.
Blocks cheaper at Japanese dollar store.
What? And all it is melamine.
Yeah.
So you could get pure melamine. It might be not as caustic as Mr. Clean. Yeah, at the Japanese dollar store, you could buy these in blocks, and some of them you could break up into triangle shapes, and it's pretty cool.
It's the same.
It's just melamine. So I don't know what they put in Mr. Clean, because if you look at the ingredients, it doesn't say. And it says, not safe for children and this and that. So there's something in there. It's not just. And it also says don't use. So this is what it says. Do not use with chlorine bleach or other household cleaners. Rinse required for surfaces in direct contact with food. So think about it. And then it has all these things that you're not supposed to use it on, but it says do not use on skin or other parts of the body. Using on skin will likely cause abrasions. Oh, that's what, no, keep out of reach of toddlers and pets to avoid accidental ingestion. So, I mean, you know, there's so many don'ts, you know, how safe can it be? So I'm just gonna get transparent yellow out because I just love transparent yellow. And I think I'm gonna get some phthalo blue out. Oh, my water is so yucky. And there we go. There's some gorgeous phthalo blue. So I'm gonna get this kind of damp here. Oh, and one other thing. Oh, there's a piece of, what I do is I just see if there's pieces of Mr. Clean. If there's pieces of Mr. Clean on here, and I just want to be sure that that's gone. And this is good and dry from when I did this. Oh, thank you, Vicki. Okay, so I'm going to get this damp or wet. And like I said, this painting is so far removed from what was intended. Hmm? Oh, yeah, it's right there. So I'm just adding some color here. And maybe we'll have little bits of sunlight or bokehs here. Meaning, you know, when you see photographs and there's little soft circles, those are called bokehs. And I've created a nice soft bokeh there and here, letting these colors mingle, working wet on wet. Ooh. Good thing it landed where I wanted it. So it does work, but of course, we're working on a background that we did not have to take to white either. And I didn't get this damp before I put some pigment on here, which is a no-no. And there are some oranges in here too, because there's some oranges here. So, ooh, that's awfully orange though. So I'm just going to have that move down. This is all nice and damp. Let's warm that up with some yellow. Same thing here. So it's still, I can still paint on this surface. But again, like what I said was, this is a surface that I did not have to go back, and I'm just putting a little orange there because this flower has some orange in it. So I just don't want it to, I want it to seem like it still fits. Put a little bit of blue here, get that darker. But we've got some soft edges there. Everything is blending and softening. I can add water if it's not blending enough. So I'm able to work on this, but because this was just a test to see how well the paper would react. I scrubbed in here. And I really disturbed the paper. But you don't really notice it because I went over it with Mr. Clean. So it just kind of abraded the whole thing. But this kind of warmed it up. Okay, so this is a nice segue into masking. So let me just soften that out. Just using water, and I came down here, that's fine. So my student can now finish this however she wants, even if it's just ripping it. But she could have a little bit more fun in here. So this is the image of how, this is what I had intended for the image. And she did great with protecting the butterfly and the little French marigold, but got a little lost working the wet and wet background. So what I had done was I protected this little French marigold and this little teeny tiny butterfly that was on the French marigold. We masked this whole thing off. When it was dry, we worked wet and wet to make this soft background.
That little white part right there on the edge, if you take that off on hers over there, and you try to Mr. Clean, you think it would go back to white?
Let's see.
Just that tiny, tiny one.
So let me put this aside. So we're gonna see if we can get it back to white.
Just in a small area.
And I didn't get it wet right here, so that's good. So there's that. We had a really cute white edge here. So what I'm going to do is I'm putting tape down. I'm going to have to do this in batches, dang it. I was horrible at origami, but I'm pretty damn good with tape. And we're going to do the same thing on this side. So we're trying to get this back to white. So I put tape here. I'm getting Mr. Clean. Ooh, it's so yucky. Dipping it in water. Oh, maybe I should use a clean Mr. Clean because this, it held all the paint.
Is it an Edith's checker spot?
What?
Butterfly?
I was at Filoli doing a workshop and I go out into the garden. I don't know what kind of butterfly it is, but it was small. And I followed that damn thing until he started dancing around. He actually was going around and around. And once he stuck his proboscis in, he felt that means he felt safe enough to eat. So I was able to come in a little bit closer and zoom in. So I don't know what kind of butterfly it is.
Gal said she thinks it's Edith's checker spot.
Oh.
But
So I am trying to get this to white. Can you see all the Mr. Clean coming off?
yeah, but it is getting white.
Well,
Lighter.
it's, oh. Okay, so now I'm gonna get this. Now we'll take Very cool. Very cool. But now we've got little pieces of Mr. Clean here and there. So that worked well. You could have done the same thing with a scrubber. It was protected with the tape, and you could do the same thing with a scrubber brush. Just saying.
Yeah.
It was so much easier to remove color with Mr. Clean because we were going all over the place. It would have taken me forever and a day. I'd still be working on the damn thing if I use this little scrubber. So this was really good. I was able to paint over it, but you people are going to have to start doing tests yourself. So if you're using it and your painting is this light or lighter, and you start using that, and then you want to paint over it, this color is going to kind of move into this white of your paper. So I only use these kinds of tools when I'm done with a painting. It's like I said, it's not a technique to paint. It's a finishing technique, if that makes any sense. Okay, so on to masking. So this is the photograph that I took. I love this little butterfly and I love the background because it was hard to focus. See how well camouflaged he is in his environment? I love it. This is a line drawing I did. I want to protect this marigold and the butterfly. So what I did was I sketched what we wanted to protect. And what I did was I used sheeting for skit. And I will show you what I mean, but there's a pencil edge and my sheeting frisket is going to be inside of the pencil edge. And I'll show you what I mean. This is, I just had somebody here, we were talking about wet and wet. Look at, we have blossoms here, but all I had was, this was masked off. This is the sheeting frisket. And then what we do is we go around the frisket with liquid frisket to seal all of these edges in. The reason why I use black ink Sharpie on the edge is so that I can tell where the frisket edge is. If you didn't put a line here and you place your frisket down, you can't tell where the edge is because it's transparent.
But that's not on your painting.
No, and I'll show you. Once I have the masking done, I take, or I have my background where I want it, I remove all of this. Oh, look it, I need Mr. Clean on my hands. This is kind of what you get. So one of my students had a stencil, so we tried a stencil out on here. This, we worked all wet and wet to get our background where we wanted it. And this sheeting frisket and the masking around the perimeter saved any color from coming underneath. I did have one little leak and it's right here. So yellow encroached inside there, but that's not bad. And this is what I came up with. So it's a softer background. It's less noisy than the original photo. So you can see, and I didn't put this yucky thing in. So I have more oranges. So as an artist, you get to decide what you're going to edit in and out. And so it mimics this background, but it's not fighting as hard as this photo is fighting with the background. So I just softened everything. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I do this in a short little demo. So. Oh, I'll clean my hands later. This is sheeting frisket. It's like contact paper. This is sheeting frisket. It is by what? Oh. And it's transparent, so I can see through underneath, and I can see my line there that I wanted to protect. So what I did was, I'll show you. Sometimes it's hard to explain things, but it's so easy to see things. So I am cutting the sheeting frisket. Oh, and I will show you something else in just a moment. And I'm just turning. I want to be sure that a black edge is all around this dang stuff. So some people just put it down. No, there's more to it than that. So there's a paper backing that comes off. And now you can see that it's very transparent. Yes, yes. And so I'm manipulating and moving that where I want it. And if now you see that my sheeting frisket piece is smaller than the shape that I want to save. And that's because I'm going to use liquid masking. And I love this one myself. I use this over anybody else's. It's Incredible White Mask by Graphics, Grafix. The sheeting frisket is also by Graphics, Grafix. And if you're buying it, always get the matte. This paper backing is no good to me anymore, so I can throw that away. So what I do is I just put my liquid frisket, and I'll just do this really quickly. I pour a little bit of this into a container that's not going to be dropping. And so I've got a little shot glass here. Wish something else was inside of it, but that could be for later. And so I have a little wooden dowel. And I just went to the hardware store, got a wooden dowel. I chopped it up into 8 or 6 inch pieces, stick it in a pencil sharpener, you got a nib. So I'm going up to my inked edge. And I'm also going over the inked edge of the frisket. This is opaque right now. And I'm just showing you because I want that. Ooh, I just moved the dang thing. Anyway, this is what I do. And when it dries, when the masking is dry, it will be transparent.
And it won't move.
And it won't move. So number one, let's clean up our little nib. Oh, I'm getting a little excited. The masking is nasty. It's ammonia. It's yeah. Oh, what am I doing? I told you I'm getting a little funny. Anyway. So this is wet. This here is dry. So what I'm going to do, I did this already so that we didn't have to wait for that dang thing to dry. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint over this so you can see how well this works. And we'll just wait for that to dry. But in the meantime, I'm going to show, and I'm just going to wick up the excess that's right on the masking, the sheeting frisket. So right in here, with this, I wasn't done with the masking, so why did I pull it away? I use different tools, and I just wanted to show you some of the different tools that I use. You saw one, which is the wooden dowel. Another tool that I use, oh, if I could get the dang thing open, is a ruling pen. And I love these ruling pens. It's got two little tines like this. There's a screw that will open it or tighten it. And so here's my little screw. I'm gonna tighten it up a little bit. I dip it in and I'm going to, you have to practice a little bit, but there I've got my thin little lines, which are wonderful if you're doing boats in harbor and you don't want to use white paint and you need to put masts in. This is perfect for that. Okay, so that's one tool that I use. Another tool that I use is I have a nib like this. I get this, it's a fine line applicator. It comes in two sizes. This is a fine tip, which I love, which is a 20 gauge. And there's another one that's a little bit larger, which is an 18-inch gauge. But with this, what I like to do is I like to turn this upside down gently. If there's any air bubbles, the air bubbles are going to be traveling up to the top instead of hanging around down by the bottom. And, oh, I didn't try this out. So we're going to see how this is going to work. I let a student use this. And of course, it's all dried up. Anyway, this works wonderfully in let's see. Let's see. So this is the only, oh, here we go. So what's wonderful about this is you could draw, you could do all kinds of things. Sometimes I use this as I'm doing water. You know, there's like little, you could do all kinds of things. I also can sign my name and then paint over it and take it off when I'm done. But this, and also this helps to fill some spaces in, like if I needed to draw windows or things, okay? So, and I love the ruling pen wherever the hell it went. Here it is, but it only will work as long as there is masking in this little reservoir here. So this, you could just keep going till it's empty. Okay, but I do love both of these. I've done paintings of cactus, and I've used, oh, and I want to show you something else also. So I'm going to work on white paper, and I'm gonna, there we go. So I want to do little star shapes. And some of your questions were, how do you fix masking when you take it, the masking off? Sometimes the shapes are just too gauche or just horrid. And this is getting this back in. Okay, so Dang. Okay, so this is dry enough. I get my rubber cement pickup eraser. And pick this up. And so that whole entire area was protected. So, which is a great thing, and where I didn't have to paint or fill in a whole space with liquid frisket. That was wonderful. So this is still wet. This is still wet. And that's still wet. But so I'm going to give this a chance to dry and show you.
There's a question. You still have a black line on it. The white and the black line in blue.
Yeah, that was just a shade. Was that?
So if that's your painting and that's your.
This is what I wanted to protect.
So the black.
So this was just an exercise so you could see. I would not put a black Sharpie anywhere on my painting.
Thank you.
This was just to show so that you could see that this was protected. And I used the Sharpie on my sheeting frisket. So it's just an example.
Right there.
If I did this line in pencil, you wouldn't have been able to see the line. But because I used ink, you were able to see the line. In real life, I would never put a Sharpie down, but I wanted you to be able to see it. Okay.
We're at 5 after 3, just so you know.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so. I used the ruling pen to put masking down to create these little edges of the wing to show that they were glossy. I also use that with masking here so that you could see the fuzz. Okay. I just wanted to show that there's different reasons why you would want to use this. If you're painting spider webs, if you're painting a cat with white whiskers, this is perfect. I also use masking to make sparkle. So I'm gonna zoom in. So I used frisket or the masking and I made little stars or hashtags, whatever you want to call them. And then I filled the center in, and as I painted all of the watercolor, when I was done, I took the masking off. Some of the sparkles were just too damn sparkly. So what I did was I went around and I just hit some of them with a little bit of color. So they're not so noisy. That is less noisy than that is. So I left the centers alone, but I took some of these little cute little wings or whatever you want to call them, the sparkle edges, and just went over that with a little bit of color. Now from far away, it just gives this illusion of sparkle. And I did one of those, and we'll see if it's dry. Nope. And let's see. And softening. Oh, perfect. While we're waiting for this dang thing to dry, when you have masking, And it comes out really harsh when you're taking the masking off, and you don't want it a harsh edge. How do you soften? Well, I've shown you guys. So I'm just going to do that all over again. And so I'm going to get, now this is really old. I kind of lost interest in it. But so this is too harsh of a line, and I need this to be a softer edge. I have a photo reference. And so there is a light edge here. There's a light edge here, but there is a white here, but it's not so super harsh. Same thing over here, same thing in there. So these are really harsh. So what I'm going to do is show you how to soften those out. So what I do, I want this edge softened. But I am going to be getting the brush on this side. I'm going to be going into what's painted to soften the paint. Does that make sense? I'm not going to be working the brush over the paint. I'm going to be softening into the paint from the light edge. So this is a staining color, and this color is Quin Magenta. So what I'm going to do, I work in little steps. So I don't feel like I have to work the whole dang thing all at once, but I'm just getting the edge. And like I said, this is a staining color, but you can see the difference already just from me doing that. So it's very different. That's much softer than this right here. So again, I'm going into the white, and then I'm going into the paint, and I'm just wiggling that brush right into the paint, and I'm wiping into the paint. This is a part of finishing. And if you have, your masking shapes, you may not be happy with, but you were able to save your edges. So that's not that impressive. Well, it is, but it's, I wish I had more pigment on here. Same thing in here. So I just wiggle in with a damp, clean brush. And this is harder. So there's some real staining colors in here, but I'm just softening that edge. So I softened this right here, where this is a harder edge right there. These little teeny tiny things really help. So it's a bit softer versus it being really harsh, like right there. Okay, so what if, so I'll show you something else. That was cool. So this, wrong way. This one was a fun project to work on, and this was done wet on wet. What we did was we painted all of our oranges, and then we flooded this whole thing with yellow, and we just wicked away a little bit where our whites are going to be. And once that was dry, then we put our masking in because we didn't want it super white. And then we added more oranges and a creamier yellow over the whole thing. when we took the masking off, it was very abrasive, hard edged. And so what I did was get a cute little scrubber like this. This is a connoisseur tack-long scrubber. It's got a chisel edge and it's a 1/8. And what I did was the end of the masking just ended right here. And there was a blob of it. So all I had to do was scrub a little bit and just take these out. And take these out. And I got rid of some of the pencil lines. So I'm trying to see where I did that here.
And you may need to zoom in.
Okay, where the hell am I gonna go? I guess I could go right in here. So look at, I have a pencil line here. I don't know if you can see that, and the light is hitting right where I'm going to be softening. But I have too much water on my brush. So I'm just gonna work an edge. I know I don't have enough. We got a Goldilocks staying thing. There we go. So just lightly picking up. Of course, there's no masking there, but I'm lifting up some color and I'm getting rid of a pencil line to boot. I already worked this and finished that off, but I did have an abrupt end to where my masking ended. So I could kind of soften this out even a little bit more. So my masking ended right here and I brought this out. I could be a little bit more, give that even a little bit more oomph. And I'll just be a little bit softer. So it's not ending so abruptly, just like that. Or my masking ended right here and I brought this down like that. So I was able to soften an edge, and I showed you on the orchid how I also did that, where I softened that out. And I'm just gonna see if I could clean this up a little bit more. So here was an area that was masked. And just cleaning that off. And I'm just gonna take this, and this is a scrubber, and it's an angled scrubber, so I'm able to control this instead of it being a round or a filbert edged. And that's a little softer, not so abrupt. Okay, so I'm gonna show, hopefully the masking is dry. Oh, it's dry enough. It's still wet underneath, but it's dry on top. So on the fish painting, this, now you can see what I did. Okay, well, let me zoom in. Looks like a 50s, 60s little design that'd be on a ceramic or something, right? Cute. And then this is the ruling pen. Oh, this is where the ruling pen was. And then this is where the applicator was. So I have a love-hate relationship with masking. Sometimes it's necessary, and I have been doing almost everything to not use masking. It's so caustic, and then you buy some, and 3 months later it's no good anymore. So it's just a lot of work. But if you need it, it's a wonderful, wonderful tool to use. So when this is dry, I can remove that. And this is starting to dry because remember how it was just opaque and white. It's starting to dry, so it's starting to become transparent. And remember, this was just so you can see the exercise. You know, I did not draw magic marker or Sharpies in here to save it. I use pencil, but as I was doing the example, it was, you could see the magic marker, but if I use pencil on this paper, you wouldn't have been able to see what I was doing. Okay. So what else?
Well, I think the thing to explain is that you're showing them techniques of how to fix different things on the paintings. You're not necessarily fixing them. You know, you're not. She's like, "You put the thing on the painting." You see what I mean? Yeah. So these are ways.
Yeah, because so here is another painting that we use masking on. I use masking to save certain areas here. Once the masking was dry, I wet this whole paper, put yellow down. While it was wet, I added phthalo blue, and I wicked up a little bit of the color in some of the centers here. This is what I came up with. And once the colors were in, we started working separate shapes and working wet in wet. So I wet this whole area, put yellow in, put some blue in, and then I put a dark in and just worked wet and wet. And then once everything was in, then started working the centers. These are so damn cute. And here is somebody's. Can I say the name? And this is Vicki Wilson's, and her colors are beautiful. So she let the colors mingle and everything, and it just got a little lost right in here. So what I'm going to do is show how to lift some of this. And so I'm using scrubber brushes. These are actual scrubber brushes. This is the Connoisseur white Taklon scrubber. They have a chisel edge. It's very strong and tough. These I love to use, and these were brushes by Tulip, and I haven't been able to find these, but I got these at Joann's Fabric because this is what they would use to paint on fabric. But they're like a scrubber, but they're softer. And that means less damage to the paper. So what I'm going to do is just lift a little bit of, yeah. So what I'm going to do is zoom in. I mean, yeah, I am going to zoom in. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove a little bit of color. And are we in? Yeah. And I'm just getting it wet, and I'm just getting used to this paper to see what it's like. And I'm just getting it damp. And I'm just nudging it and trying to release some of the pigment on there. And then you can see, so I keep wiping the brush away and paper is coming off. So I flick the edge. I'm removing a little bit of color. What Vicki has done was she got these really dark edges. And so I want to be able to meld those edges into this. But if I didn't remove some color, these dark edges are just going to get darker and darker, where I want some lightness in here. Did I explain answer that? And I can see that Vicky's already scrubbed in here. Oh, this is good because once you scrub something, it is so hard to paint over something that's scrubbed because you have disturbed the paper surface. And what happens is the paper is no longer smooth, so it's not going to accept. And now I just took a little bit of color off, and that's all that was needed. I want to lighten this area right here.
Go back to what you were saying.
So the paper surface is now roughed up. There's no way you're going to be able to get a soft, wonderful gradation or transition of color like what's happening here. See how the dark is blending softly into this blue green, and this red softly moves into this beautiful green color. That's never going to happen over here because we've just scrubbed in here. But what I do is I wait for this to dry, but we don't have that wonderful, we have to work now. So what I'm going to do is this was obviously scrubbed. This, I don't know if it was scrubbed, and I didn't scrub, I just loosened up. And what I do is I have a burnishing tool, and this is a plastic burnishing tool. Also, the scrubber, the actual scrubber brushes have a chisel edge here, and you could use that as a burnisher also. And so I'm just going to burnish. And what I'm doing is I'm rubbing the surface of the paper, because your paper was like this. Oh, that's hard for me to do. And then once you scrub, your paper surface is now like this. So when you go to paint, it's sinking into all those horrible, roughed up patches. So what I do is I burnish just by rubbing it. And what it does is it kind of makes for kind of like hot press paper. And I don't know how many of you work on hot press paper, but it's different than working on cold press paper. So this was wet, and I am burnishing this whole thing. So it's going to be hard to get a gorgeous transition like this. But when I paint in here, I have to be a little bit more on the dry side. Okay, so I have phthalo blue, there was permanent rose, and there was transparent yellow. So I'm going to make sure I have these colors ready for me. So I'm getting some permanent rose. All right. So, oh, it would be wonderful if I had a photo reference, and I know I'll be right back. I have this phone. I'll just use the thing. Yeah. All right. So I am going to add a tiny bit, and because it's like I'm working on hot press paper, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work section by section and get that damp. And I'm gonna put a little bit of phthalo blue. Ooh, that was more than a little. But I'm gonna take this and bring it in over here because she so clearly delineated these little segments. I'm gonna work right in here. So I'm getting this damp. Gonna add some phthalo in here, and look at these colors are what's around it also. So this is gonna make it seem like they belong, and they do belong. Gonna do the same thing right in here. So I'm getting this damp, getting a little bit of phthalo, putting it in. And I'm gonna take this out there and in here. And I want a little bit more in here. Softening that edge out. And gonna do the same thing right here. Soften this edge. Oh, you can see where the paper's kind of roughed up.
So guys, you damage your paper further, you know, actually maybe if you're scrubbing and get a hole, is there a way to repair it?
I don't know. I wouldn't scrub that far. I did a painting and they were of crab apples. And I had to scrub, and I kept feeling that you could tell that you were getting to the paper, you know, that you were going to be sinking in. And so I just had to stop. The other thing, when I'm scrubbing, if you need to get back to white, you're going to be scrubbing hard and fast. You're not going to be sitting there leisurely rubbing and rubbing and rubbing, because what you're going to be doing is you're going to be going, instead of taking the color away, you're rubbing the color into the paper, and you just have to be sitting there, and that's where you have the danger of having to scrub all the way through. Hard and fast. Absolutely. I know it sounds nasty, but you're doing something nasty to the paper. But you want that paper to hang out. So, and that's I'm telling you, that's from my experience. You don't want to have that experience. Okay, so I'm just going to, oh, I should have taken a picture of this first. Excuse me. So let's see. I want some blue in here also. And that's way too much. So immediately I'm going to stop once I get my blue where I want it. I'm just going to soften this out. Ooh. And this is all nice and damp now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up a gorgeous taupe color. So I'm going to get my pink over here. I'm going to get some of the yellow over here, and yellow and that Primrose make a gorgeous orange. And the opposite of orange is blue. So that's more on the orangey side. Gonna add a little bit of blue to this. Make a taupe color. Ooh, let's use a darker brush to mix that. There we go. I want that a little bit deeper. And, oh, and switch the camera. And so I'm gonna, Vicky has these wonderful edges. And what I want more than edges, I want more shapes. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of going in here and giving little intersection shapes. So I'm filling some of this stuff up. So it's giving the illusion of depth. So she has some, but I just want to be more just have more to it. And see, this is roughed up paper. So I don't know if you can see how it is spreading irregularly. Like especially right here. So what I would normally do is wait for, and see right here how I just put some color here, but it started going right into this because that paper is roughed up there. So, but I don't want color right here. And you could see so I'm working too wet. So what I have to do when I'm working on paper that is damaged is you have to work drier. I'm working too dang wet. And so what I do, it's almost like I have to have a creamy, not creamy, but a dry amount of color, and I have too much pigment. So let me mix some. And I'm going to take it off the brush. And as I paint, even this is still too wet. So you have to, it's like you're just barely touching the surface. And this is still just too wet. But that is what I do. And I'm just taking a very, and I would do a little bit at a time. I wouldn't try to get to paint the whole darn thing, would just be working a little bit at a time. And you see, instead of me doing a continual line, I'm breaking it up into shapes. I did something there, I did something here, I did something there. In nature, it's not like we're seeing the whole shape. So look at, I'm getting it dark right here. And maybe I'll just get it dark right there, but I don't have to outline the whole thing, if that makes sense. It's very helpful. Look at, it's acting like the tissue. And you can see I mix color, but they're separating out on the tissue. So I need to be kind of dry as I am putting this in. I love all the colors that are in this succulent.
For about 20 till, you want to take any questions?
Sure, sure. Oh, and I can show the image of that I was telling you where I went through almost to the other side when I was scrubbing. And I could give an example of how and how not to scrub. Kind of like what I did with you don't have to close the door all the way. So this, so this right here and this right here, I wanted some softness, and so I was scrubbing, and this almost went through to the other side. Scary. So when you are scrubbing, don't do this. See what I'm doing? I'm just rubbing. And what I'm doing is I'm pushing that pigment into wet paper. So you don't want to do that. And I'm not, yeah, this is. What you want to do is you want to go hard and fast to get rid of something. If I just kept doing this, and this is a wonderful staining color of phthalo blue, you want to go hard and fast to get that out. And if you were doing something that needed an edge, you use that blue tape, but you need to go hard and fast. And this is just an example of masking on dry paper, on damp paper, on wet paper, and saturated paper. So you could use masking. You don't have to just use it on dry paper. That also gives a wonderful technique.
So Darwin, when they asked about looking places that are too dark, that can also mean overworked, correct? So maybe just explaining that that's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. So ask me that again.
Okay. So a lot of people's comments were fixing with something that's too dark. But then we had other people who wanted to know how do they salvage an area that's overworked, and kind of can be similar. So maybe
Yeah.
explain the difference or something.
So to me, I like what's happening here. I love what's happening here. This to me is a little worked, but this to me is way overworked. Instead of me going into the tree, I'm looking at all of this. It's so bright and right there at the bottom and in the corner. So it's taking my view. It's really grabbing my attention. Also, I didn't like the colors. They're too rainbowy colors out here. So I kind of wanted to tone the rainbowness in here, and I wanted to get rid of the jumpiness. I love that it's all modeled and everything, but this is really pulling too much attention. So I want to tone that down first. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over this with a color. This has some creamy colors in the tree, so I have to be real careful, but I'm just working really quickly, and I'm not trying to move anything, but I'm just getting that wet. And I went too fast because I just went over the mountain edge. And that's a big no, 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 no. But I'll wiggle here, wiggle the brush. And so I have that taupish color from working on the other painting, Vicky's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to, and that's too much, but I didn't like the rainbow in there. It was just too much. So if I get it wet and I just do a nice little connective glaze, it toned it down. And if it's too much, I can always add water and let that run down. But it's less rainbowy. And I'm letting all of that mingle out. So I'm doing kind of a connective glaze over the tree and the background here.
Is there any part of this painting at this point that you would consider muddy?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe somebody.
So
has-
this
someone
is-
has a question about how to deal with a muddy area.
Well, let me go in here and work what I'm going to do here first. And so I always try to incorporate what I have on the painting. So if you ended up, now that's less rainbowy and it was just a little glaze of color. And right over here, I want this less jumpy. So all I'm doing is wetting this. And it's too dang bright. I want this muddy. It's too bright. So these colors are kind of muddy, aren't they? And this isn't muddy. So I just got this area wet. And these are staining colors also. So what I'm doing is removing some of that color just by getting it wet. And it's coming down and I'm letting it run off the paper. And now what I'm going to do, I know I have a wonderful pink right here. And there's wonderful pinks in here showing the blush of the new foliage that's coming out. And this is just too damn bright. I need it to be muddy. So what I'm going to do is I am going to be adding the opposite color to green, which is red. So I'm adding that to this, and it is going to change the whole atmosphere of the painting. It kind of belongs now instead of it jumping out. So in answer to your question about the mud, what did I do? I had to make mud so this kind of fits with this.
Right.
This is all wet, so it seems super bright, but it's wet. It will dry lighter. And so now what I'm doing is I'm just taking a damp, clean brush and going along where I got it wet. So I don't have a hard edge there. It'll be a softer edge. And I'm just going to let this scooch on down. So when I have something that's really muddy and I don't want it to, do you see the difference? I just loosened up some of the color, let it come off. And then while it was wet, I added the opposite color. This was so bright green, and now there's some red in here and it toned it down. So I'm able to go back and forth all over. I still think this is kind of rainbowy, but it toned it down a bunch more. I just love trees. Okay, so if you have a muddy color, and it depends where your mud is. If you're doing a flower and you're using opposite colors like yellow and purple and it turns muddy, you could do one of two things, or you can do all of these things. I did a painting of a rose, and let's see if I have a G clay of that. Or I did a painting of a rose. It was yellow at the center and it was pale out at the tips, but the shadows were purple. What happened was mixing yellow and the purple, it turned muddy. So what I had to do was in the shadows, I had to punch up the purple so it was less muddy. And I had to punch up the yellows where it was mud. And let me see if I have a G clay of that. I'm right here. I do. Right here. Let me zoom in. And I did not use masking on this. So we painted around shapes, but there was yellow and there was purple, and it started looking super, super muddy. So what I had to do was I had to get this area wet right here. And what I did was I punched up the purples and let that purple run into the yellow. Then I had to let it dry. And then in this area, I had to do the same thing, but I punched up the yellows. So
you didn't wear.
no, and this is a floral, so I don't know what you're painting. I don't know whether you've got a landscape or whether you've got a floral, but it was too muddy and I wanted it pretty. So I punched up my purples, and you notice they're just like right in the shadows. It's not the whole thing. It's just right down here and right there. The rest I punched up with yellows and pinks. And I have mud in the leaf over here. I have mud in the background. So mud doesn't bother me, but if you have some mud, well, all you have to do is intensify colors around it in some areas. And in this case, I punched it up with yellow and I punched it up with purple, the opposite colors.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm without seeing, an image, I don't know how to help you.
Okay. So I asked the questions, but that was the only one I got.
Okay.
So we have about 8 minutes. Could you mute yourself? Oh, no, never mind. Let's give our meeting.
I could.
No,
Are you talking to me?
well, I was gonna say something to them, but
Oh, okay. So I know you guys were expecting me to paint on other people's paintings, but you were asking questions about things that I could show also. So this is one of the little snowflake things. This is showing the red with the ruling pen versus the applicator. And if I needed to tone this down, like this is way too jumpy, all I have to do is go over that. I'll show a couple of things. One is just going over it. I should see what color I have. That's pretty damn good. But you could go over it and just tone it down. And they kind of just disappear, especially if you have little balls at the end like these are.
They're still visible.
And you still see the sparkle, but it's less jumpy. Let's put it that way. And I'm not adding a lot of pigment. And you saw how I softened an edge on this by just using the softening, the scrubber brush and working on the inside, and you're going up to the pigment to soften that out. And this is a muddy painting. Whoops, going the wrong way. So I have mud here. So the green and the red together made some mud. So I'm going to have to change this to be a little bit brighter, but I don't want it too bright. I want these to be super, super bright. But anyway,
5 minutes, you want to talk about your classes or anything like that?
sure.
Okay.
So I am teaching. So look at how different that looks. So cool. So I teach here in my shop. And I have 2 day classes, which is a Tuesday and a Wednesday. My Wednesday is kind of full, but I have room on the Tuesday class. And I also have an evening class, and that is Wednesday evening. And those classes are from 5 to 8:30. And I have plenty of room in the evening class. I also teach Friday, and that is a live online course. You could come here in person if you want. You could paint here in person with me. And then, but everything is recorded. So I have people that are doing a project, kind of like these things. And you get, I'm just going to get a couple of projects. This was a project. These are some of the projects. So this was a project not too long ago. This was another project, the Los Altos Hills. And we just finished this one, which is Filoli, the entrance to Filoli. Once you go over the bridge, there's some trees there and it makes a proscenium. And there's usually deer out here or turkeys. And so I took this picture and that was a lot of fun. So anyway, what you get is I will send you, once you pay for the class, I send you a line drawing so you could print your line drawing out, and a photo reference, and I give you a link to Dropbox. That's how you get it. Once we are starting class, I record everything, so you'll get the recording. So if you can't be there live during the class, you could paint anytime during the week to catch up. You're going to send me a photo of what you did, and then we have a critique first thing Friday morning. So that is a guided class, and those are Friday mornings. We start at 9 and we go to about noon. So, and those are posted on my website also. And yeah, so feel free. Also, if you're just interested, instead of coming for a class, maybe you just want to, where we could have a clinic where we just work on a painting that you need help with. And if there's a few of you, we could just have a clinic instead of just continuing on and on. And I would be happy to do that. So if there's some interest in there, let me know. I'd be happy to have a clinic on a weekend or maybe a weekday that I'm not working. So I had fun. I know you wanted to do me to paint on more paintings, but you had such good questions and I wanted to be sure I did a clear showing of what that meant. And that was so funny where I thought this was so clear and you were hung up on the shape being surrounded by ink. But anyway.
Yeah.
So.
All right. We'll just sign up and say thank you, and is it by top, it'll come to you.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I'm gonna mute and let Susan say goodbye.
All right. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you, Guy. I think that was wonderful. And as he said, a lot of the things that he showed you were techniques so that you are able to go and fix a painting of yours if need be. And I think everybody is giving you some big thanks here. If you want to unmute yourself and say thank you, that's up to you. And we'll be signing off here right at 4. Thanks, everyone. And I put Guy's website information into the chat. So go there and see his projects, classes, and workshops. Thanks, Guy.
Thank you, Guy. I appreciate it.
All right. Over to
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.